Welcome to OpenTechTalks.tv. Today we have a guest speaker, Maurice McCabe, the founder of AIASystems. Welcome, Maurice. If you introduce to audience what you do and where are you based?
I'm a AI generative AI specialist and software architect. I'm based in Los Angeles, though I've been working in Silicon Valley for about 10 years and been in LA for about 20 years. And so I've been in the industry for quite a while. Originally from Ireland, and I've spent all my career in software development. Been tracking the generative AI phenomenon since fairly close to its onset. Been in the AI space, more in the machine learning side, since about 2008. Worked with a startup there where we were developing advertising network for mobile devices, and we filed some patents on that that used machine learning algorithms, and I've been kind of experimenting in that space since then. And then in the last 2 years, I've been focusing on generative AI.
All right. So let me start. I read about AI Factory in your introduction. So let's start with that topics
Yeah.
because what is AI Factory? Because every organization is bringing about talking about AI Factory, every vendor, and we go to customer to talk about you need to have your own concept of AI Factory. So let's hear from you. What did you introduce as an AI Factory, and what are the pillars behind it?
Yeah, the concept of the AI factory originally is sort of an evolution of of product enterprise engagements. When you're dealing with a lot of enterprises and you see a lot of patterns emerging, you're dealing with subject matter experts, and you start seeing the same kind of patterns arising in workflows. What we plan on doing with the AI factory is essentially spinning off startups that focus on these niche oriented specialties. So if you look at the large scheme of things, the foundational models tend to cater to, let's say 95% of use cases. A lot of them are consumer oriented use cases, and they're a wide diversity of use cases. What's called the long tail, you know, Professor Ng from Stanford, the AI godfather, if you will, one of the AI opinion leaders, describes it as the long tail. And it's the long areas of specialization, the multiple use cases for specialization that go on and on and on that require sort of niche specialty to direct focus to build a product out of these areas. And so the AI factory is kind of focused on taking these learnings that we acquire from our engagements with enterprises and spinning off products that can be reused either as SaaS products or as libraries or as other kinds of formats that we can use to capture some of the value from those learnings. So it's kind of based on the Y Combinator model, except that it's kind of like we sort of laughingly refer to it as Y Combinator for old people because it's kind of geared towards subject matter experts. These are people who have been in the industry for a very long time. They've acquired very focused specialties in enterprise workflow, and this is largely unstructured data. And so we would work with these subject matter experts. We would bring them into the AI factory. We would try to make them the CEO or the CTO of the startup if they're willing to come in, or put them on the advisory board and have them guide the company through
Okay.
to product market fit and scaling from there.
All right. So maybe let's hear from you about the idea of AIA systems, and then what are you doing from the last 2 years with the agentic AI and AI? What are some common patterns that are being emerged?
Yeah. Well, what's happening with the industry as a whole is that there are very common patterns emerging. A lot of them are along the lines of real time voice, real time avatars. We've evolved a little bit past the Gen AI chatbot, text based chatbot, and we're getting more into this real time avatar scenario. So we're building a platform that allows us to design and publish generative AI agents whether they're swarm-based agents or just standalone agents. Most of them are kind of swarm-based, and then we publish them or we release them onto our platform. And our platform is sort of a layer that we've added on between, if you know WebRTC. WebRTC is kind of like the underlying platform that we're using right now, actually, is a kind of a WebRTC platform. And Zoom uses WebRTC, Google Meets, Microsoft Teams, and there's a couple of other custom platforms as well where you can do programmable WebRTC. So it's geared more towards the developer. And WebRTC for a long time has been a kind of a difficult problem to solve. It only got solved in the last few years, last 3 or 4 years, let's say, and it's now at production quality. That's why Zoom came out of nowhere, out of the blue during COVID, and expanded, very, very rapidly, because this WebRTC platform now scales very well. But it really was an immature technology up until about 4 or 5 years ago. So we're basing our technology on that stack, and we're adding a layer on top that allows us to publish these agents. And we're currently hosting our own hardware for those agents, and the agents will show up in a room, like the room this would be the terminology for WebRTC is a room. We would be considered to be in a room currently, and the agent would essentially be sitting in that room and will be waiting for another person, usually just one other person, to join the room, and then it would interact with that person. So just like you and I are just two people in one room, one of us would be the agent and the other of us would be the human interacting with the agent. And this gives you a scalable platform. And in that agent, the agent can be either video based, like what we're currently doing now. It can be a lip synced avatar speaking back to you in real time. It also has control over and so you can display things that are relevant to the conversation. Could be like if it was a training avatar, it could be flashcards or summaries of some historical thing or some technical thing. Um, so we have that platform that we're building on top of. It's called LiveKit, actually. But a lot of people know it. It's livekit.io, and it's a programmable platform. And our layer goes on top of that. Um, and we're hosting our streaming, our agent streams, our agent swarms on top of that. And we're also doing telephony as well. So we can do telephony based agents. So you just call them up on the phone. Again, it goes into the same room. The agent is sitting in that room waiting for a phone call. The phone call comes in and you're talking to that agent without the video component. So it's just over the phone. And we're building a few agents. Like a typical agents that come up are appointment setting agents, sales agents. We're working on an insurance claims agent that works for healthcare.
Right.
And there's a few other patterns that come up, and it's like Professor Ing says, it's that long tail of these agents that we're building. So we're building this platform that we can publish these agents on, and we're planning on opening it up to developers to be able to take our existing agents, adapt them, configure them. We have a workflow editor, and you can add our agents into the workflow, or you can design and publish your own agents and put them into the workflow and develop more complex workflows. So it's a work in progress at the moment.
Any lessons learned which can be shared with the fellow community members who are trying to start something on the agentic AI, as you have already practiced and trying to do it? Anything which you can share with them?
Yeah. Well, it depends on where you are. Like if you wanted to start your own consulting business, or if you want to bootstrap your company, or kind of like do a little bit like what we're trying to do, I think a good place to start is if you're bootstrapping, you need cash flow. And or if you're bootstrapping with the idea to start spinning off products like the AI factory idea, then you need cash flow. And the cash flow is either available through financing or through your engagements, your other projects. And there's kind of like a unique opportunity in this year and the next year, maybe, where because of the productivity gains that the tools like Claude and Windsurf and Cursor provide, your productivity is going very, very high in terms of developing. So your engagements, let's say you're doing custom engagements for enterprises, if you can tap into that deal flow, and it's not that easy to tap into the deal flow. You need a good sense of marketing and a well-developed network in that enterprise space. And or you can partner with existing companies that don't have this generative AI discipline, and they want to expand their organizations into that generative AI space, then you might be able to tap into their existing deal flow. And we've actually done that with a few companies. We're working with a few companies now that that we're providing essentially their Gen AI department. So they've already got their marketing already done, and you can kind of tap into their deal flow that way. They are, you know, a lot of these companies, they're in that stage where they really have to adapt aggressively to get into this generative AI space, or they will miss it. So they're very open to working with companies that are interested in doing custom generative AI enterprise projects. And from that deal flow, the idea is, and with your productivity gains using these, using these productivity tools, your margins should be pretty healthy. And from that, then from the positive cash flow, after all your expenses are paid, you can then start firing off projects that can lead to products. Then you've got a whole other problem to solve. But that's the general, if you wanted to start up, bootstrap yourself into a place where you can become a product company,
Okay.
do it self-funding, then this would be one way to do that.
Okay. And if some organizations are trying to adopt Agentic AI into their process within the organization, so any challenges, lessons learned, which can be shared?
Yeah, well, we've developed this sort of framework that we're calling the ADAPT methodology, and it's kind of geared towards, it's sort of like a management consulting type level engagement that you would use to engage with a substantially sized enterprise, where we do the evaluations, and we provide them with a strategic tool that they can use, without getting into the nitty gritty details. But we've kind of learned from our engagements that a lot of enterprises, they need this kind of iterative strategic tool that's targeted towards AI and generative AI, and allows them to adapt a lot faster. The analogy I use is, it's a little bit like the waterfall pattern that we use for software development versus the agile pattern that we use for product development. Currently, most organizations, most enterprises, they use sort of a waterfall model of management, where they do planning on a monthly or a quarterly basis. They evaluate their competitors. They make their moves to counteract competitive forces, and to maintain their position in the marketplace, or to expand their position in the marketplace. That kind of process has to be sped up, essentially, and targeted towards AI, generative AI, because this is a time that has never occurred before in the past. It's really a sort of a revolutionary time, where thinking intelligence is now commoditized to a certain extent, and nothing like this has ever happened. And that means that there's a fundamental change to the way enterprises should operate. They should operate with the knowledge that intelligence is now a commodity, and it can be automated. They have to look at what are their new competitive vulnerabilities now that generative AI can do what it can do. If a competitor adapts before they adapt, what are the strategic decisions that you can make to counteract that and preserve your competitive advantage? The thing with one of the qualities, or one of the properties of intelligence, is, with a feedback loop, intelligence can accelerate fairly rapidly to this idea of like an escape velocity. And even within this enterprise, in a niche competitive space, your competitor can reach that escape velocity before you can reach that escape velocity. In a sense, then it's like they become the dominant player. It's like a monopoly play within your market niche. So that's sort of like what the ADAPT framework is supposed to help you give it support for.
Now, maybe in our initial talks, you mentioned something on maturity, AI maturity, or generative AI maturity. So are you doing some work on that area with the customers, or maybe end organizations? And how is it playing an integral role, or essential role, in the Gen AI adoption?
Yeah, we've done a little bit in developing the maturity model for Gen AI. We have done extensive work in that space, but we find that the first A in the ADAPT methodology, which is a cyclical methodology, is something that you cycle through as fast as you can. as an enterprise. We do try to assess the maturity of for the readiness of that enterprise to adapt to the generative AI. So we look at their data maturity and we look at some of their process maturities, and we don't grade them. We're not at that point where we're grading them from 1 to 5, but we're just sort of doing an assessment along with the overall A for adoption, accessibility to of the organization to generative AI. So that's the first A in the adapt framework. So it does use a little bit of a maturity framework
Okay. All right.
principles, just for
Yeah.
processes and for data.
Any initial concerns, challenges which you're getting from maybe from security point of view as you start working with voice, audio, video, and all that one?
Well, we haven't noticed too much on the security side yet, because we're in the pilot phase in a lot of these enterprises. And the product side, the product development side, so far because we're running on top of LiveKit, we're using LiveKit's WebRTC platform, and we're not seeing too much in terms of hacking of the voices or hacking of the text based conversations. But we are aware that the prompting can be hacked, and you can try to convince it to do something that we kind of don't want it to do. But what we do is we have an evaluation loop. So while for each engagement we do an evaluation to see if it did the right thing. So we do, like, it's not a preventive, it's not catching it up front, but it can catch it on the tail end, so that if something does something that it's not supposed to do, our evaluation loop at the end will say, oh, okay, well, it either hallucinated or it got hacked, but somehow it didn't reach the KPIs or didn't conform to the performance parameters, the limiting performance parameters that we've placed on this agent. And we can adapt in real time, we can make adjustments in real time, or we can just fire off alarms and allow a human in the loop to try to resolve make adjustments to the prompt, avoid that kind of occurrence again. It's not a guarantee, but I think it's kind of the way that most of these agents have to be handled for security. You have to do it kind of retroactively instead of proactively.
Okay. So maybe from an architectural point of view, over the so many years, organizations are having their enterprise architecture. And with the Gen AI and Agentic AI, what are your thoughts on adjusting, bringing those new technology into the existing enterprise architecture?
Well, that's a good question. It really depends on the company. It's kind of on a case-by-case basis, but in general, if you've got an enterprise that's using an enterprise service bus, or it's using a lot of microservices, you've got to really do a top-down analysis of their workflow, and a lot of it is, you're adding on most of the time. Sometimes you have to reevaluate the company, like if they've done acquisitions or they don't have their data dictionary set up in a cohesive manner. Sometimes you have to do a top-down analysis and see if they can conform to a standard dictionary. But in most cases, what you're dealing with, if you don't have silos of information, what you're dealing with is you're trying to capture unstructured data that hasn't been captured before. So a lot of the existing enterprise systems, they're using structured data. It fits into a data model. It's using a data dictionary, and you can leverage off of that data for sure. But you can also capture unstructured data. In other words, data that doesn't really fit into a typical data model, conventional data model that all enterprises have been using for basically the last 40 or 50 years. All software up until the last couple of years, even ongoing, is being developed using these structured data models. But voice is not really structured, and conversations are not structured. These are all the workflows that are typically labor intensive are there because they haven't been automated yet, because they use unstructured data. So we would typically capture those workflows, develop agents that automate those workflows, and then integrate them into the existing structured part of the enterprise system. So we often don't really have to delve into the enterprise side, the existing enterprise side too much.
Okay,
This is usually just all new software.
right. Any specific technology you are using to develop your agentic platform, or is this open source or proprietary or anything which can be shareable?
Well, we use like Llama Index and Crew AI
Right.
and components of the tech stack that are not low code but high code.
Mhm.
We avoid the low code side of things because it's good for prototyping, but it locks you into a corner fairly quickly, and you have to kind of you can't code your way out of it. You have to sort of restart, but it's great for prototyping. But like I said earlier, we do use livekit.io.
Mhm.
I'm a big fan of their platform using
Mhm.
WebRTC, um, and then we partner with other. We use APIs from other companies like
Mhm.
11 Labs and Cartesia.
Right.
We use Tavis for the lip syncing avatar.
Mhm. Mhm.
I'd encourage developers to check that out. That's a pretty cool platform. And there's a couple of open source samples of Tavis on livekit.io. If you go to their website,
Mhm.
they've got some pretty cool lip synced avatars, which
Right.
is kind of like, I didn't think we would get to these lip synced avatars as fast as we have gotten to them, but
Mhm.
now they're available and it's
Mhm.
scalable.
Yeah.
And another thing I would probably encourage people to take a look at is the LiveKit has a beta program for
Mhm.
deploying your agents. So your custom agents for which you would have to create sort of a scalable environment. You have to do the DevOps, you got to do
Mhm.
the microservices, you got to do all of that kind of
Mhm.
scaling up and down.
Mhm.
LiveKit has now released a service that does that and
Okay.
makes it very easy. In a few lines of code, you can deploy your agent to their platform.
Okay. You said it's gonna be ready in very soon. All right.
The beta you're saying, or
Yeah.
the LiveKit beta is
Yeah.
available now. You can just sign up for the beta right now. I'm not
Okay.
sure when it's being released. I would expect in a month it would be released.
Okay. All
Yeah.
right. All right. So before we conclude for today's session, what's your thoughts so far with the rapid changes and everything's coming every week, something new? So how, being a technology folks, how we need to adopt to the changes which are happening every week?
Well, some of it, part of it is filtering the hype out from the reality.
Mhm.
And that's a
Mhm.
hard part because
Mhm.
the big foundational models, they're highly incentivized to keep the investors on hook.
Right.
So they will hype everything up
Mhm.
beyond the practicalities of the reality. But there is also the reality,
Mhm.
which is still kind of on an exponential path, I would say.
Mhm.
So it's a little bit about not getting too scared and to lose perspective on the pace of rapid change
Mhm.
and identifying the actual pace of rapid change. And that's a bit of an acquired skill. It's sort of like not believing the knowing what not to believe and knowing what to believe. And the only really good way to do that is really just to get a pilot up and running or to play with the technology yourself and just see what it's capable of. But just know that it will be changing rapidly.
Mhm.
I follow people on X.com. I kind of have an open-ended doom scroll on X.com. So I'm just
Mhm.
constantly getting fed all of these new
Mhm.
product announcements. And it's impossible to stay ahead of the curve. And you just have to play with it and find what works and what doesn't work. That's my perspective on it, at least.
Okay. Thank you so much for joining. If someone wants to reach out to you, what is the best medium or your organization?
Yeah, you can reach me at Maurice at AIASystem.com. And that's Maurice is spelled Maurice. And I would love to hear from anyone who's interested in the generative AI space, especially in enterprise. And if they're interested in spinning up a product, or if they're SMEs in the enterprise space, I would love to hear from.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much. Thank you for spending time.
All right. Thank you, Kashif. It was a pleasure.